Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic. Let's do it. What was the scariest experience you've ever had in your life? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was 16, my friend 17. We decided to take her dad's manual truck for a drive. I drove since I learned on a stick at 14. Still, I wasn't a super experienced driver. We're driving along, see some hitchhiker teens, and quickly discuss throwing them in the box, but decide not to. We're heading onto the highway to go downtown, going 100 kilometers. Trying to light my cig, but it keeps going out. She grabs the lighter. I take my eyes off the road for a split second, look up, and we're headed for a light pole. I, inexperienced, yank the wheel to the left. We fly across the highway into the ditch on the opposing lanes. Yank the wheel again back through the median, and flip 2.5 times, landing upside down. We were unscathed. Seatbelt saved us. I still, 29 years later, think about those two boys and how they'd be dead if we'd picked them up. I was 17 and went whitewater rafting in Oregon over the summer. There was part of the river that narrowed quite a bit, and if you floated down the river before this narrowed, you could throw yourself underwater, and the river would shoot you out like 100 yards downstream. I threw myself underwater, and immediately panicked as I hit the faster water. I was being banged into, rocks, spun around, upside down, etc. It was all just seconds, but I accepted that I was going to drown. All of a sudden, I popped up 100 yards downstream, exhausted, and couldn't swim. The more I tried to swim to shore, the more I exhausted myself. Just as I started to go under, I felt a rope hit my face and snatched it. Thankfully, another group saw me and threw me a line, saving my life. You are not as good a swimmer as you think, even if you spent most of your childhood in water. My first epileptic seizure. Having my senses fail one by one is terrifying for a 14-year-old. First, my eyesight, then hearing and smell, taste all go out the window. No one around you understanding you, and you're unable to understand them. All you're left with is touch. All you can hear is your own heart beating and the feeling of whatever surface you're touching. Then you have no control of your body and just jerks uncontrollably. Just the warning signs get me scared. It's why I never drink. The drunk sensations remind me of the beginning of a seizure. Sleep paralysis. It happens to me a few times a month, and even though I'm lucid and I know what's happening, it's still terrifying because the feeling of being watched and or attacked by some creature feels so real, and you can't move or speak, just scream. Being SA'd and then stalked by the same person for a year. I thought he was going to murder me. I managed to get him kicked out of the country, so I'm safe now, but there was a time that I didn't go anywhere alone while I was in the long and awful process of reporting the SA, and he was stalking me. He would break into my apartment to scream at me, appear out of nowhere less than 5 feet behind me at 9 p.m. at night alone, hang out around the front of my apartment building, show up to my sports practices, make excuses to come near me for anything, crash my birthday party, generally terrorize me. Going through cardiac tamponade was probably the scariest thing I've experienced, and I've unfortunately experienced it twice. It's essentially when too much fluid accumulates around your heart and starts squeezing it. Too much pressure builds up and keeps your heart from beating properly, and it's very fatal if not treated immediately. Both times it happened, I ended up in a respiratory and kidney failure. I was in and out of consciousness and ended up having emergency procedures while still semi-awake. The pain and drowsy feeling of almost dying is something I'll never forget. I don't remember how old I was, but I was in primary school. I was awoken in the middle of the night by my mother telling me we had to go now. She and Dad had been drinking again. As we got into the street, Dad came out and things escalated fast. As a little girl, I had to stand between them crying and begging them to stop. They didn't listen. At one point, Dad had her pinned up against a fence, telling her how she wasn't taking us. Eventually, the neighbors came out, and we hid with them. Dad then threw rocks onto their roof. The cops were called. Dad calmed down after that, and we then just had to go back inside and go to sleep. I woke up the next day to Grandma in the lounge room getting us ready for school. Mom told the school counselor what happened, and next thing I know is I'm being pulled out of class and put into a cop car to get our things from the house. Long story short, my parents are still together and still have custody of all us kids, but now I live with my grandma. I wish it was only that one time, but there were many. No young person should have to endure that. I kind of know it all too well. There was a traffic jam in Cambodia, and I was on the back of a motorcycle taxi. He zoomed around the traffic, and the scene at the site was a dented car, a shattered moped, and a severed torso. I was in shock. That's the first time I'd seen a dead body. The guy nodded to me with his helmet, bobbing, and in broken English told me, "This year, the god wants to drink the blood." Anything brain-related, Lyme meningitis, and 4 concussions, all of which has resulted in years where I just wasn't me anymore. I just wanted to cry every day for a while. Even now I know I'm not right, probably won't ever be right, and I could cry if I think about how I'm quick to anger. I get confused easily. I lose my train of thought and forget words for things. So many other things, just frustrating things. I'm not me anymore and it's sad. I liked me. Maybe not the scariest situation, but my life was in serious danger 2 times from 2 different things in a matter of about 45 seconds, so this isn't a great memory for me. I live in a sort of rural town, and before I turned 21, there wasn't much to do on weeknights after my friends and I got off of work. This boredom led us to driving around for an hour or 2 when we got off, talking and decompressing after our shifts. One night, we had been driving for a while and decided to head back to the restaurant so we could all get back in our own cars to go home. We were on a rural road with a big open field to our right and a pretty thickly wooded area with a few houses spread out on our left. This is a pretty long stretch of road, and just past the shoulders on both sides are semi-deep drainage gullies parallel with the length of the road. Living in town, everyone has seen cars stuck in those gaps before, so we're typically extra cautious when we drive it. As we're heading back, a deer jolts out into the middle of the street. It did one of those juke moves deer tend to do when they notice that their life is flashing before their eyes, and my friend swerved. She was able to correct herself quickly, but for the 3 seconds that I had not noticed that we were about to hit a deer head on, felt like I was moving in slow motion. I literally made eye contact with the deer as he was panicking, trying to figure out where to run off to. We all obviously panicked for a second, but then noticed we didn't hit the deer, and we were still on the road, and took a collective deep breath and started to nervous, awkward laugh about it. I guess my friend who was driving was an autopilot from the sudden rush of adrenaline because she immediately continued driving. I'm not sure how the following situation occurred. I assume the 3 of us weren't paying attention because of the previous situation. But suddenly, not even a full minute after the deer situation, my friend who was driving screamed. My other friend and I looked up to see us driving headfirst into not only the gully on the side of the road, but a telephone pole as well. It was really something out of a movie. It felt like time slowed down, and the light pole was just getting closer and closer to the windshield. What probably happened in a matter of 5 seconds felt like 10 minutes of pure fear. I was certain we were all about to die. I was sitting there in the front seat about to take a windshield and a telephone pole to the face, thinking about how my mom was going to feel vindicated because I didn't tell her I was going out after work, and I was literally going to end up dead in a ditch somewhere, and how my family members would use me as an example for years to come. If you're going out somewhere, let me know where you're going. Remember when Teal Hair Don't Care told her mom she was working? And she was really driving around out with her friends? She ended up dead in a ditch because she didn't tell her mother where she was going. I felt the front tire dip off the pavement and knew it was the end. Somehow, in a split second, my friend who was driving was able to quickly maneuver us back onto the road, where we promptly pulled into the shoulder and had a collective anxiety attack for a few minutes. We drove back in silence and never let that friend drive at night again. My friend in the back seat and I were both pretty shaken by what happened, but The driver was very flippant about it. None of us had even talked to each other about what happened or really had time to process it. But she had gone into work the next day sort of bragging about how she saved all of our lives because she's such a good driver. I will honestly never forget that night. I still get chills and can see the pole coming toward the car when I drive down that road, especially at night. TLDR was a passenger in a car with some friends driving at night in a rural area, and we almost hit a deer, managed to miss it and stay on the road, and then almost immediately had a near miss with a gully and a telephone pole. If you made it this far, thanks for letting me trauma dump. I know it's not the scariest situation ever, but I had already had some quirks about swerving or spinning out when driving from a previous experience, so this has really impacted me and caused me a lot of anxiety, and I haven't really shared this story many times. That's a great descriptive story, and a little comical when you said you decided to never let that friend drive again. Yeah, maybe not even during the daytime. Forget about just at night. Oof. My parents let me walk to school in junior high. It was about 7 or 8 blocks. My neighbor's dad offered me a ride to school one day. I accepted since I was really close with his daughter. We went to different schools. I felt something was off during the car ride. I just had a weird feeling. And luckily, I made it to school safely. A few years later, I found out my friend's dad had repeatedly R'd her and even got her pregnant several times, but her family hid it from the neighborhood. I believe he had every intention of SAing me the day he gave me a ride to school, but didn't. In fact, he never offered me a ride again. When I think about it, I think how lucky I am that I made it to school safely, and it still gives me goosebumps knowing I was in danger and didn't even know it. I was in college taking an exam when we got the order to go into lockdown due to an active shooter. We all hide in a corner, turn off all the lights, and get as quiet as death. All I can think is, don't come in, oh God, please don't come in. After an excruciating 30 minutes, we got the all clear, but eventually it was decided to cancel all classes for the rest of the day. Later, I found out that the active shooter was really just a kid who had pulled out a gun in an argument and left without hurting anyone. But just the thought that someone could break into the classroom and shoot me made me so very relieved to get home. I have a long list of how I am almost died. Gone fully blind. Someone has threatened to kill me. Someone has died. Someone has almost died, etc. But for me, the scariest thing is still that time when I was alone at home. I was in the shower when I heard something from the other side of the house in the middle of the night. I had just put shampoo on and didn't have my glasses anywhere near the shower. I panicked, wrapped the towel around me, got my hunting knife from table where I had left it daytime, and went to see what it was. Nothing. I checked every corner with knife and flashlight. Didn't find anything. Doors were locked, but I bet even today that it was coming inside the house. It was a long night because I quite literally slept with one eye open and knife right next to me. After reading a few of these, I realized my scariest moment doesn't really compare, but this is it. My wife was 23 weeks pregnant with twin boys. We had a baby moon planned out where we'd get out of the city to a quaint town a couple hours away to B&B. When she got home from work, she told me a quick story about how her belly felt like it was tightening for a second and then releasing. Not very long spurts, but it was happening semi-consistently. She told her coworkers, nurses, and doctors, since she works at a hospital, and they said to probably contact her gyno. She was in a nervous but optimistic mood when she got home after telling me the story. She gave a quick call to the doc, who said to go to the ER now. So the optimistic side of her just vanished. I, packed a light bag for the two of us and left for the hospital, different one from where she works. On the way, she called the B&B to cancel our weekend. It was an amazing older couple who said don't worry about any cancellation fees and hopefully we'll get another chance to get there in the future. After the admittance, it was brought to our attention that she was suffering from Braxton Hicks contractions, and although it can be dangerous for the mother and children, it's usually okay. They wanted to keep us there for monitoring over the weekend. That night was when the scariest moment happened. The attendees on call that night were in and out of our room constantly, and it felt like a madhouse. Around midnight, a few of them came in and had a talk with us. It was obviously planned out who was going to do the talking and which one of them was in charge. She told us that my wife's body doesn't want the babies in there anymore and is trying to kick them out, basically. There was a very real chance my wife could go into labor in the next few hours. If that happens, the babies would absolutely not survive, and there's a non-zero chance my wife would die as well. It felt as if my entire insides were snapped away, and I had nothing there anymore. I remember trying so damn hard to concentrate on what the doctors were saying, but not being able to understand one thing out of their mouths after that. After comforting my wife and giving our respective families the news, I went outside and called my best friend, who lived 3 hours away, and told him what was going on. I'll never forget him saying, "I hope everything turns out well, but if anything goes bad, you can always have more kids. You only get one, my wife. Make sure she's the first priority." When dawn came and went, and no babies tried to escape, things got better. Her contractions became less severe, and the doctors didn't think the worst case scenario was possible anymore. She was put on modified bed rest for the rest of the pregnancy and ordered to drink a ton of water each day. Here we are, 8.5 years later with 3 awesome kids, had another little dude later, and are ridiculously happy together. We did end up getting that B&B a year later, and the wife cried tears of joy when she realized who we were. TL, TR. Wife almost had our twins way too early, and all 3 of them could have died. Everything turned out fine, and we went to a B&B a year after the incident.